good morning or good afternoon or good evening or good night. Let's do a 1 month check-in on my personal curriculum. Hi, I'm Colleen. If you are new here, I have devised a year-long personal curriculum for myself. I did a video about it, which I will put in the description if you'd like to start with that one. And what I did was I took every subject in a general sense that one would find in mostly like a high school curriculum and gave myself an assignment for the year in each of those. And they're very loose, I'm not studying pre-calc. And this is my first month check-in. I purposely gave myself a year-long curriculum rather than a semester or a month because of the way my life is right now. Life is very busy, and not just with my author writing career, which is very busy right now, but with being a mom to 4 kids who have sports and activities and birthdays and all that sort of stuff coming up. Let's start today by going over some very loose goals I made for myself for the first month of this curriculum and how I don't think I hit any of them. I got close, but I don't think I actually hit any of them. I lied. I did hit some of them. So let's do in the order in which I gave myself like my schedule, which was first period is history. In history, I wanted to read the first 30 pages of A World Lit Only by Fire and take notes. Second period is religion. I didn't give myself a religious goal because where I landed in late September, I didn't have a really set curriculum for religion yet because of what it is, which I'll get into when I talk about it more in depth. Third, I had French, and my goal was to complete the intro and then lesson 1 and lesson 2 in my French book. I think my French book has 12 total lessons. Period 4, I had science. I wanted to take 3 pages of notes on my science texts. And then I had lunch 5th, I think. And then 6th, I think I did English Lit, which I wanted to read the first 50 pages of Redwall with my kids. And then lastly, I had math, and I wanted to finish my first scarf of knitting. So if this is your first video, you're thinking, Redwall for English Lit, knitting for scarf, or knitting is math. So now let's get into my curriculum a little more in depth. You can see this lovely little rainbow you're going to get here, and I'm not going to move. There's a big window right here next to this bookcase, and it has eastern exposure. And so you're slowly going to see the sunrise. Let me just maybe do that. There, that's a little bit better, I think. Not as much glare. You're still going to get a little bit of aura over here. It's going to be magical. So let's go ahead and start with history. So as I said, my first assignment was to read the first 30 pages of A World Lit Only by Fire. And I did do that. I'm on page 32 or something. I'm on page 31. Here's an interesting thing. This was so helpful, these 30 pages. I have so many notes. I highlighted. I would say it's a mark of a really good book when every single word seems like it's deemed highlightable. So there are pages in which I have more highlighted than not. And it's just chock full of really good information. But there's an interesting thing I found while reading this. So I'm specifically researching the medieval period. And beyond that, my interest is more in the early medieval period than the late medieval period. So me particularly, I'm looking at the fall of the Roman Empire around 400, a little before around 500, a little before 500 AD with the multiple sacks of Rome and the barbarian tribes moving into the Roman Empire lands. I'm really mostly interested in from that period until about the year 900, maybe 1000. So while the beginning of this book was very helpful, I find that as I got to this page, we are moving into the Renaissance already. So, and then I looked in the back at just some different medieval figures that I'm interested in and found that they aren't really covered any further in the book. But here's the thing, I really enjoyed reading this book. So I'm going to continue reading this book, but it's the portion I've read is really, I think, what I'm going to get out of it for specifically the medieval period. And you'd be surprised. Those 30 pages had so much information in them. It was lovely. Now, I did find some other reads that I didn't have on my list for this class. So let me show you those now. We're just gonna keep shifting the camera. Just shifting it so you're not blinded by the sun. So I already in the last video talked about Mysteries of the Middle Ages, which I am very excited to read, but so that is part of my reading list. I'm just gonna kind of go over everything for people who this is their first video. And next, I had Medieval Lives on my September TBR of a book just to read for fun. And I didn't really enjoy the writing style, but I'm not going to give away this book or officially DNF it because there are two particular chapters that I'm very interested in, and they are Eleanor of Aquitaine and Hildegard of Bingen, which are just two women in medieval times it's always funny to say that phrase, who I'm particularly interested in. Now, neither of them, as far as my brain is remembering, are during that particular time period of the 500 to 1000 rather than 1000 to 1500 that I'm specifically focusing on. But I do think specifically Hildegard of Bingen will be a really interesting person for me to read about, it having to do with my religion aspect, which we'll talk about that next, my religion class. Now, I was kind of like shocked that I had forgotten to do this, but I have this great collection of The Great Ages of Man, which is this Time Life niche encyclopedia set, which I got from my grandpa who died when I was 3, but my aunt had these books and she lives in Michigan. She texted one day and was like, I'm gonna donate these to the library unless anybody wants them. And I was like, don't donate them. I want them so badly. And so she brought them the next time she came to visit. And I had not even thought to look at these. And so I went through these finally and I picked out 3 that I think would actually be very helpful. First is Barbarian Europe. And this specifically I liked because it's going to look at the fall of Rome and then from there, what kind of happens to Europe. So the first chapter is the Twilight of Rome. I also went through the index to see specifically what I could find on particular battles and historical figures who would be covered, and a lot of them were. Also, what I really like about this is these books have like a lot of art in them, which I do think is helpful when you're looking at a time period, so you can kind of get like the idea of what art looked like, what like how royalty would have dressed, how they were perceived in the time, what weaponry might look like. So that one I grabbed, obviously. That's the cover. I can't remember if I showed it to you. The next one I grabbed was Age of Faith. And this one's going to be very helpful because this is really about the transformation of Europe from pagan to Christianity, which I'm super interested in. We all have our little niches. And also it has a lot about feudalism, which is very important for the time period as well, and how Europe became more urbanized, I guess is the correct word. Also, this has a lot of really good art in it, which is helpful. That's a cool picture. And then lastly, and this is more just because I wanted to get a wider picture of the world at the time period, I pulled out the one on Byzantium. So I am mostly focused on kind of like what became of the Western Roman Empire than the Eastern Roman Empire. When Rome split, I'm not going to remember what year because it's been a really long time since I took my Roman Empire class, but it split into the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire, and the Eastern Empire became Byzantium, which didn't fall until 1500. So it was actually quite powerful throughout the entire Middle Ages. Byzantium was like a flourishing place, and Istanbul was the capital of it. It used to be called Constantinople, and then it was called Byzantium for a little while. So I thought this would be really helpful with just sort of getting like a world view and also looking at what Byzantium, so if you think about the Western Roman Empire and then Byzantium on the East, they're more like seeing what's happening in Africa and the Middle East and like Southern Asia, sort of, not really like the northern part with Russia. But I thought that would also give me a really good framework to put what I'm learning in place, in time, in the world. And then lastly, this book is going to sort of transition us into religion, but I was at Half Price Books. Our Half Price Books is right next door to an Old Navy, and I had to return a pair of pants my daughter had bought, and I bought this sweater for myself while I was there, which is the coziest sweater, and I'm really happy. I try not to buy that many new clothes, but I'm really happy I bought this because I'm absolutely wearing it every other day. But then I stopped by Half Price Books just to see what was there, and they had like 3 romance novels by authors that I love, and then I'm like, I'm just gonna go look at the history section. Usually it's very hit or miss, and I found a book called Medieval Women by Eileen Power, which is like exactly what I'm trying to study, but it is very difficult to study medieval women because not a lot's written about them. But here's the cool part. So this is just a really quick, let me see how many pages this is, 89-page book. But the last chapter is nunneries. And my religion assignment is to study what life was like in a medieval nunnery, specifically like an abbey, not a monastery. I specifically want to look at the religious life of women in the Catholic Church during the years 500 to 1000. And then also there's a chapter on the education of women, which will probably lean a little bit into religious life. And then they've got the working women. I'm just going to go through each of them. Working woman in town and country, the lady, which is about more regal women, and medieval ideas about women. So this is literally exactly what I was looking for. So you never know what you'll find. Okay, so we're gonna move on. I also should have mentioned earlier, I did make myself this binder, which is specific. It's not aesthetic. I'm not an artist. Art's not on my list of things to learn, but it's more like utilitarian, and it's where I'm keeping my notebooks. So this is my notebook on medieval studies, mostly because I had already started quite a bit of medieval research before I started this curriculum, because I am researching a project that I want. I'm an author. I'm researching a project that I want to begin work on in 2026. So I'm trying to get all my research done beforehand. So that notebook is where I'm keeping my notes on that. And then I have my 2 other notebooks in this binder for my other subjects that need notebooks. Let's start with French, which is red. And the reason I just had this like discussion on Threads about what color every subject is. I wouldn't put French as red. I would put it as yellow or purple. But I had a red and a green notebook, and we're not gonna waste trees. So I don't have much in here. I have 1 page of notes for French currently. And here is my book. Now, I'm on page 12, which doesn't seem very far. And I'm about halfway done with lesson 1, and I completed the introduction, which is not a huge, I don't know, that's probably like 10 pages. Oh, actually it was a little bit more. So you will see I did not complete my French goals, whereas I did complete my history goals. Oddly, I have found French to be the hardest thing to work on. The book I got, this has kind of been a pain. The person who I bought it used, the person who did it beforehand wrote in the book in pen. So all the answers are there, and it's kind of hard for me. What I need to do is I need to go through with like a whiteout stick, white them all out, and then photocopy them. My printer is a photocopier also, and then create my assignments like that. I am finding it easy to remember what I've already known about French. So the point I'm at right now, this is also like a really interesting textbook, because I don't think if I had ever learned this language, like if this was German or Italian, that I would be able to follow it at all, because it's very like intuitive, but I don't think my 42-year-old brain is very intuitive anymore in terms of learning a language. It kind of just is like, doesn't teach you what a word means and just kind of assumes you'll know what it means because it's similar to an English word. But I have some very exciting news about learning French. I said in my original video, like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I just want to get back to where I understood French when I was like in middle school. I'm not trying to be as good as I was when I was 22. I had a moment where I sort of had like a mom meltdown, which happens. And 2 years ago, my husband went to Europe with his friends, and he was begging me to go to Europe with my friends. And I was like, well, that's much more difficult. And anyone who's watching this, if you are a mom of a lot of kids and you are the primary parent, or if you're a dad of a lot of kids and you're the primary parent, it's very hard for the primary parent to go out of town. So I was just not doing it and not doing it and not doing it. And then finally I had a little bit of just like a existential breakdown about who I used to be and who I am now, which is pretty normal for a 42-year-old. And I emailed 2 of my friends from college, and I just said, does anyone want to go to Europe with me in January? And I was very open, and I said, does anyone want to go to Copenhagen, Amsterdam, or Rome with me in January? So one of my friends right away responded that she's actually going to Germany as a, I forget what you call it. She's going with her daughter's German class. Her daughter's in middle school, and they're going for spring break to Germany, and she's one of the parents going with. And she was like, we're not going to be able to swing two trips to Europe in 1 year. But my other friend was like, yeah, but then she was immediately like, I don't want to go to those cities though. And I was like, okay, I'm very open about other cities. And then we didn't talk about it for like a week, and I didn't think anything of it. And then she just texted me one day, Paris ? And I was like, oh my gosh, should we go to Paris? And we're going to Paris, which I'm so excited. And hopefully that's going to really like jumpstart me and being excited about France. I literally booked my flight like 5 days ago. We don't have accommodations or anything, but if you are thinking about going to Europe and you are on a budget, which obviously I am, I'm not going to spend a ton of money on a vacation just for myself. It's quite inexpensive. Now, it's not like $200, but it's quite inexpensive to fly to Europe in January. And here's my thought. You know, my husband was like, well, it's going to be really cold. And I said, you know where else it's going to be really cold? Here. You know where I'd rather be cold? Paris. So I'm going to be cold in Paris this January, and I can't wait. And I do think that is going to make me more excited to work on my French for the next couple months, hopefully. Because I do need to be able to get around a little bit. I know everyone speaks English, but I always think it's like a little bit polite to understand some of the language where you're traveling. So for the first 2-ish weeks of this, I was super motivated to work on my science work. I'm just getting my notebook out right now to show you. If you were not here for my original curriculum video, my science class is that I want to grow over 30 pumpkins in my garden next fall. I've grown pumpkins before. I've had a couple years that have been really poor in terms of my harvest. I got 0 pumpkins this year after planting over 100 seeds, which was heartbreaking, but it's okay. We're going to make it work. So I had given myself a stack of books and my handy dandy notebook. And here's what I've done. I did read everything in this book about pumpkins. And I also read like the squash stuff too, because they are like technically a squash, I think. And oh, it just got really dark and windy. Beautiful. So I read everything in this and took notes. And I read everything in this one and took notes. And now I have 2 pages of notes, not 3, so I am 1 page low. I didn't do this one yet, which is like my big Bible-y one, which I am going to do pretty soon. I just love this book to figure out what it says, but I've already learned so much. So I think I talked about this in my other one, but one of my friends is a actual farmer. She's one of my writing friends. Her name's Hadley Gray. There's her book. And I ask her a lot of advice because she actually like has a working farm that she like eats mostly out of, and like animals and like all that. She can do all this stuff. And while we don't live in the same like zone or whatever, or even the same area of the country, she's a great source of knowledge. So when my pumpkins weren't making girl pumpkins this year, and that's bad. If they don't make girl pumpkins, you can't have pumpkins. And they were also looking terrible and very stunted. And she told me, pumpkins are ground feeders. Like you really have to feed them. And I was like, okay. So I like got fertilizer, fed them, but you're not supposed to fertilize that often. So I just sort of like couldn't figure out what was going on. I remember that the year my pumpkins did so well was 2020. And I was thinking that they had done so well in 2020 because I gave them so much attention. Because it was 2020. And so what the heck else are we doing? I'm literally with my kids in the garden all day long being like, let's look at the pumpkins. Let's get the squash bugs off. Let's play with the herbs. Let's do this. You know, we're all just trying to get through that summer. But what I didn't realize, and I remembered after I took all these notes, is that the place where I planted the pumpkins, I used to every fall, so this would have been fall 2019, fall 2018, I used to take my empty pot or my pots that I'd had on my front step with all my dirt in them, with my herbs or my flowers or whatever. When they died, I would dump those pots into this garden bed because I like to put my pots away in the garage for the winter. So I'm not gonna leave them out filled with dirt. So I put that dirt in there. So I had been unknowingly for 2 years building a great soil for the pumpkins because I was putting so much decaying matter in there. I took a really quick video that I'm going to splice over here. What I have been doing is I took all my pots again that had herbs and stuff in them and dumped them into the spot that I want to plant my pumpkins next year. But I also cut up my zucchini plant. The way where I plant my zucchinis this year, it's not in a raised garden bed. It's like right next to our porch, and it kind of grows onto our grass and it gets crazy. And so when I pulled it up this year, I usually leave it over there because that's kind of like our trash corner. I feel like I put anything over there that's like a gross plant to compost, which actually turns out to make quite good soil over there. Our zucchini did very well. And then I also had 2 zucchinis that kind of went bad. And so I put those in that part too, that raised bed, to let them sort of rot there. My plan is that I'm gonna rake up some leaves and add them, and I might add some hay, something like that. I haven't decided before I put just 1 layer of dirt over it for the winter and let it kind of compost itself. Now, I know that's not like specific compost. I know the way the video you're seeing, it's not chopped up. I am going to chop all that up, all that zucchini vine. We've been having horrible oak mites this year, which depending on where you live, you might not have these. Sometimes they're called cicada mites. And last year we had, where I live, we had the 17-year cicada business that was disgusting. But I have found since late August, if I spend more than 5 minutes in the garden, I get like 15 plus mite bites. And mite bites are so much worse than mosquito bites because they last for like 10 days. Like they're horribly itchy for 10 days. And so they die with the first freeze. So we'll be getting that soon. We're having an unseasonably warm fall, but there's no way we're not going to get a freeze in November. And so I will, after our freeze, that's when I'm kind of going to I usually put the garden to bed and do all this stuff before the freeze, but not this year. I'm going to have to do it after. So that's when I will chop up that zucchini plant. I will add some more composting materials to that bed, and then I will cover it with 1 last layer of soil to sort of help it all break down over the winter. So I'm feeling quite good about the pumpkins. I think the pumpkins are really going to work out. I am rambling. Let's get going. All right. My English literature assignment is that I want to read classic books out loud to my children, which is wonderful. Part of it is that I wanted to do it on Sundays, that I wanted to have like a 30-minute to an hour on every Sunday where I would sit in this cozy room and we'd all get cozy blankets and I would just read out loud. And I have found, and this will change, but our Sundays have been absolutely insanely busy. And that is just the season. Fall is just busy. It just is. That is to say, we have been reading Redwall, just not on Sundays. We are only on page 38, so I'm 12 pages short of where I wanted to be. And honestly, I'm going to have to start reading faster because I did want to read more than 1 book over the year. I'm not going to want to just read Redwall. I really want to read them All Kind of Family next. So what I've been doing is a few nights a week. I haven't even gotten it consistently to every night. We're reading a chapter or 2. I'm only reading it with my twins. So my older 2 are not a part of it. My twins share a room. We get cozy, the 3 of us, in one of their beds. We read a couple chapters. Here's the crazy thing though. One of my twins gets scared very easily. And I did not realize that we were going to like jump into warfare. I thought there'd be a little bit more cozy time first. So she gets a little bit scared, which isn't great, but I'm really enjoying it. And this book is so good to read out loud because the language just really lends itself to being told as a story. And so that's been really fun. I think for my next month goal, I am going to try to finish book 1, which ends on page 108. So we will read quite a bit more in the next month, but I think we'll be able to. We also should have a couple Sundays that are quiet when we can actually do some Sundaying and read. Probably not this Sunday though. We already got invited to a party. And then lastly, we have math, which is knitting. All right, so let me go through all my knitting stuff. I wanted to finish my daughter's green scarf, which I have not done yet, but I have quite a bit of it completed. So I thought I would show you. What I decided to do is I knitted a very thick scarf. Now she's little, she's 7. She can't wear this thick of a scarf. It'll be too big. But what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sew it. So it's like a double scarf. So it's really warm. And I'm probably, let's see, it's been one entire skein of yarn and then a little bit of a second one. I think I'm gonna finish this one and then the scarf will be done. I'm not 100% certain. I have a ton of this green yarn. I bought it for a different project that I ended up not doing. I think after this yarn, I have 3 more skeins. So if I want, I could do a 3rd skein. I think anything bigger than that will be too big. And then I am gonna sew it so it's nice and warm for winter because we do have quite cold winters. I am considering sewing it with a silver outline. My daughters are very into Harry Potter right now, and this daughter is a self-proclaimed Slytherin, mostly because she's obsessed with the color green. Honestly, I think she's more of a Ravenclaw, but she loves green, so she had to, of course, be a Slytherin. So I might use some, I think I have some silver yarn. That's not the exact same weight, but I think it would work as like a border. So I might do that. I haven't decided though. That might just be a green scarf. And then I believe I told you all that if I made one daughter a scarf, I might have to make everyone a scarf. So far, my middle daughter doesn't care, but Green Scarf's twin cared a lot. My other twin really wants a scarf. She's also very into Harry Potter, and this girl is a Hufflepuff. So what I did for her is I got a much thicker yarn than I had already for this one so that I won't have to double layer it. So this one will be much faster. I'll finish this very quickly. We're just gonna do gold and black stripes. I'll measure it while I'm going. I don't know. I'll make up some sort of pattern that'll work for it, that'll make it look nice. So that's my next project. This is all, of course, working towards making a blanket that I really want to make, but I do think I need to get back in the knitting because I've gotten good at just knit, but this blanket is a lot more difficult than just knit. And so I'm also considering if I want to do some sort of pattern for this one. I don't know. Probably not, because then it won't look like the traditional Hogwarts scarf, but I'll at least have to change yarn colors a couple times, which will be good to practice. And that's everything. So that's my curriculum. I'm feeling okay about where I am. I'm feeling very good about the fact that I decided not to do either a semester or a month-long curriculum because I just realized that days go by and I haven't done anything. I've been trying really hard to do at least one thing a day. And so knitting has really been the saving grace of that when I'm like, I didn't read the Redwall to the kids and I didn't read any of her World Lit Only by Fire and I didn't do any French and I didn't do any science. Like, okay, well, I can at least knit 4 rows before I go to bed. Who knew that math was going to be the one that was the easiest for me to get done? None of my teachers and not me. So moving forward for the next month, let's just quickly go over what I think it's going to look like. I did just finish quite a bit of work, which was really nice in terms of my author career, but that doesn't mean I don't have anything else coming up. And I like to write a lot in November as sort of like a leftover vestige of NaNoWriMo. What I would like to get done, let's just do class by class. For history, I'm going to kind of put World Lit Only by Fire on the back burner, and I am going to dive into my medieval women book, even though I said I was going to read Mysteries of the Middle Ages next. I'm just really interested in it and really want to read it. Also, that will kind of be part of my religion as well. It's a short book. It's 80-some pages, so I don't think it's out of line for me to want to finish it in 1 month, but I'm going to give myself 2 months to finish it just because, we're coming up on November, which is busy. How I have my month situated right now is my month is going like the 20th to the 20th, which I don't love. I wish it was more like the 15th to the 15th. So I might do my next check-in more mid-month. So I probably won't finish that book, but I'd like to get a large chunk of it done. And obviously the chapter on nunneries is the last chapter, so I might not necessarily hit it, but I am going to continue for religion to look for other sources that would be helpful in looking at medieval nunneries. For French, I want to finish lesson 1 and finish lesson 2. I have realized now that a lesson in it, like a unit, is quite long, and it's not that easy for me to just blow through it, especially because what I tend to do is I'll do like they call it like, it's kind of weird they call it lessons. They should call it a unit and then a lesson, but they call it a lesson and then an activity. I'll do an activity, and then 2 days later when I'll go back to work on French again, I'll redo that activity again to just sort of give myself a review immediately. And so it is much slower going. So I'm hoping in the next month if I can finish lesson 1 and maybe get through lesson 2, but I'm not going to give myself a hard time if I can't actually get all the way through lesson 2 by mid-November. For science, I want to take my notes on a country living book. And I also want to just work more on preparing the soil, like actually just doing it. It's going to be interesting with science because that is a class that I think once I hit December, I'm kind of going to take a break on it till probably about February when I start ordering seeds and chopping up the ice in the soil and doing stuff like that. I don't think I'm going to be doing a ton of work on that in December and January. So I think this last month will kind of be the push for the research portion of it. And then after the winter, well, like February is still winter here, so is March. But then it'll become much more like practical again in terms of preparing the soil, the seeds, deciding whether or not I'm going to seed start inside, which I hate doing because I just don't have a good spot for it anywhere in my house. And so I really don't like doing seed starting, but we'll see whether or not I do it. Next, I think I already said this, but I'd like to finish book 1 of Redwall with my girls, which I do think will be doable. I think I just have to be better about reading to them every night before bed instead of like 3-ish nights a week, sometimes 2. And I didn't start that for 2 weeks. So I'm not that far behind. I really didn't do any of that for the first 2 weeks I was working on this curriculum. So I'm not feeling as bad. And then for my math knitting, I would like to be done with that green scarf, have it ready to go, and can show you a quick view of it and then show you what I have completed on my other daughter's scarf. I'd really like to start the blanket in December because if you are a knitter, knitting a blanket is most fun in the winter because you have like a blanket laying on you a lot of the time. And this blanket's done in panels. So it's not like you have this huge piece once you're halfway done, but it is, you don't want it. No one wants to knit a blanket when it's hot out. I better be done with this blanket by May because if I'm still working on it in June, July, and August, it's going to be like big pause, finish it in September next year because I'm not going to want to work on it then. Okay, if you also are following me around from the first curriculum video and made yourself a curriculum, because a lot of you commented what your curriculum was, which I've been loving reading the comments in that video. It's been so much fun. Please tell me how you're doing in your curriculum. Like, are things going well? Are things going terrible? Are things going fine? I hope they're going fine. It's great if they're going well, but like I would say my things are going fine right now, and that's great. I'm not ahead. I'm a little behind. Cool. We're cool with that, right? We're cool. If you made it this far and you don't want to write words, here's what I'm going to ask you. If your favorite subject's history, give me a history emoji. If your favorite subject was religion, give me a religion emoji. I realize I went to Catholic schools my whole life. Not all of you had religion as a class. If your favorite is foreign language, figure out a foreign language emoji because I'm actually not sure what it would be. I guess depending on the language, you could pick something. Like if you love French, you could do a baguette. And if you loved science, give me science emoji, so on and so forth. Math, lit, give me whatever emoji that is your favorite subject. And I'm going to continue making these once a month, so please follow along if you want to see how the rest of this goes. And as always, I hope you're in the middle of a good book, about to start reading a good book, or about to start writing a great book. And I'll see you soon.